Ella had always felt like she was stuck in a loop, living the same day over and over. At 28, her life wasn't bad, but it wasn't particularly exciting either. Every day followed the same pattern. She would drag herself out of bed after hitting snooze several times, rush through her morning routine, and arrive at work feeling like she was just barely holding it together. Her job at a marketing firm wasn't her dream, but it paid the bills. She spent most of her day sitting at her desk, responding to emails, and half-heartedly contributing to meetings. By the time she got home, she was too tired to do anything but flop on the couch and scroll through social media until she fell asleep. Ella dreamed of more. She fantasized about waking up early, exercising, and spending time on personal projects, maybe writing a book or learning a new skill. But these dreams felt distant, as though they belonged to a future version of herself that she didn't quite know how to become. It wasn't until one particular Saturday morning that something clicked. Ella had woken up late as usual and was scrolling through her phone when she came across a quote that stopped her in her tracks. "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." The quote, attributed to Aristotle, seemed simple at first, but as she read it again, something shifted in her mind. She set her phone down and stared at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. Was her life a result of the habits she had unconsciously built? Was she stuck? Not because of her circumstances, but because of the small, repetitive actions she took every day. That idea haunted her for the rest of the weekend. By Sunday night, Ella had made a decision. She was going to change her habits. She didn't know exactly how or where to start, but she knew that if she could change the small things, the big things might follow. Ella decided to start with her mornings. She had always felt rushed in the mornings, barely giving herself enough time to get ready before she had to dash out the door. If she could control how her day started, maybe she could control how the rest of it unfolded. The first thing she did was set her alarm for an hour earlier than usual. The night before, she laid out her clothes, packed her lunch, and set the coffee machine to start brewing at 6 o'clock a.m. She imagined waking up feeling refreshed, sipping her coffee in peace while she read or journaled, and then heading to work with a sense of calm and purpose. But the next morning didn't go as planned. When her alarm went off at 6 o'clock a.m., her body resisted. Every muscle screamed for more sleep, and the temptation to hit the snooze button was overwhelming. She did hit it 3 times. By the time she finally rolled out of bed, she had only gained an extra 10 minutes. She still rushed through her routine, and her grand vision of a peaceful morning faded. But Ella didn't give up. The next morning, she tried again, and the next. Slowly, her body began to adjust to the earlier wake-up time. Within a week, she was waking up at 6 o'clock a.m. without hitting the snooze button, and by the second week, she found herself with a full hour of quiet before her day officially began. That first small victory filled her with a sense of possibility. She spent her mornings sipping coffee, journaling about her goals, and reading books about personal growth. It wasn't long before she stumbled upon a book that would change her life. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The book talked about the power of small habits and how tiny, incremental changes could lead to massive improvements over time. One line in the book stood out to Ella. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. That idea that tiny, consistent actions could lead to huge changes resonated deeply with her. She realized that she didn't need to overhaul her entire life all at once. She just needed to focus on small, manageable habits, and the rest would follow. Once Ella had her mornings under control, she felt empowered to tackle other areas of her life. She started by adding a short workout to her morning routine. Nothing crazy, just 15 minutes of stretching or yoga, but it made a difference. The movement helped wake her up, and she found herself feeling more energized throughout the day. With more energy, Ella started paying attention to what she was eating. She had always relied on convenience foods, chips, frozen meals, and fast food for lunch and dinner. But now she started meal prepping on Sundays. She didn't transform into a gourmet chef overnight, but she made simple, healthy meals that were easy to grab during the week. Salads, roasted vegetables, grilled chicken, things that made her feel good rather than sluggish. As her physical health improved, so did her mental health. She found that she had more clarity and focus at work, and for the first time in a long time, she felt productive. The tasks that once felt overwhelming now seemed manageable, and she even began volunteering for new projects. Her boss noticed the change, and after a few months of steady improvement, Ella was promoted to a higher position. It wasn't a huge promotion, but it was a sign that her hard work was paying off. Her evenings transformed as well. Instead of wasting hours mindlessly scrolling through social media, she set a timer on her phone that limited her screen time. After 8 p.m., her phone automatically locked her out of apps like Instagram and Twitter, forcing her to find other ways to unwind. She started reading more novels, self-help books, biographies. She even picked up her long-abandoned sketchbook and began drawing again, rediscovering a hobby she hadn't indulged in years. While Ella was making progress, she soon realized that building good habits wasn't enough. She also needed to break her bad ones. Her phone addiction, procrastination, and emotional eating were still lingering in the background, threatening to pull her back into her old routine. Breaking bad habits was much harder than forming new ones. The first bad habit she tackled was her phone use. Despite the timer she had set, she often found herself sneaking back onto social media or browsing the web late into the night. It felt like an addiction she couldn't shake. To combat this, Ella decided to remove temptation. She started leaving her phone in another room at night, plugging it into charge on the kitchen counter instead of by her bed. In its place, she bought a simple alarm clock. At first, it was difficult. She missed the dopamine hit of scrolling through her feed, and there were nights when she felt restless, unsure of what to do with her hands. But gradually, the craving to check her phone faded. She found herself sleeping better and waking up feeling more refreshed. Next, she focused on her tendency to procrastinate. At work, she had always put off big tasks until the last minute, which caused her unnecessary stress. To break this habit, she implemented a technique she had read about called the 2-minute rule. If a task could be done in 2 minutes or less, she would do it immediately. For larger projects, she broke them down into smaller, more manageable tasks and tackled them one step at a time. Ella's emotional eating was the hardest habit to break. After a stressful day, she still found herself craving comfort food, pizza, ice cream, chips. She realized that she was using food to cope with her emotions, especially when she felt overwhelmed or anxious. To address this, she started keeping a food journal. Whenever she felt the urge to eat out of boredom or stress, she would write down what she was feeling instead. Over time, she became more mindful of her emotional triggers and began finding healthier ways to deal with her feelings, like going for a walk or calling a friend. As months went by, Ella barely recognized the person she had been just a short time ago. The small habits she had adopted, waking up early, exercising, eating healthy, limiting screen time, had compounded into something much bigger. She was healthier, more productive, and happier than she had ever been. But the biggest change wasn't external, it was in her mindset. Ella had always thought that success came from big, dramatic changes, but now she understood that it was the small, consistent actions that made the biggest difference. She had learned to trust the process, to embrace the idea that progress wasn't always visible day by day, but over time, it was inevitable. Her friends and family noticed the change too. They commented on how much more energetic and positive she seemed. Her mother, who had always worried about Ella's lack of direction, was thrilled to see her daughter thriving. Even her co-workers began to look to her for advice, asking how she had managed to turn her life around so completely. Ella wasn't done growing. She knew that habits were an ongoing process, and there would always be room for improvement. She had learned to love the journey, to appreciate the daily rituals that kept her grounded and moving forward. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was in control not just of her schedule, but of her future. But life, of course, is full of surprises. A year into her transformation, Ella faced a new challenge, one that tested her newfound habits in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her company was going through a major restructuring, and layoffs were inevitable. When Ella found out that her department was among those affected, she felt a wave of panic wash over her. Suddenly, all the positive changes she had made felt fragile. Would she be able to cope with the stress? Would she fall back into her old habits of emotional eating and procrastination? For a brief moment, she felt that familiar sense of hopelessness creeping back in, threatening to undo all her hard work. But then, something shifted. Instead of succumbing to fear, Ella leaned into her habits. She turned to her morning routine for solace. Waking up early and journaling helped her process her emotions and clarify her thoughts. She reminded herself of the progress she had made and how much stronger she had become. Instead of withdrawing, she reached out to her support network, friends and family who had been cheering her on during her journey. They encouraged her to stay positive and reminded her of her skills and talents. With their support, she decided to view this challenge as an opportunity rather than a setback. Ella also began networking. She attended workshops and seminars related to her field, putting herself out there in ways she hadn't before. Each connection she made felt like a step forward, a way to expand her horizons and explore new possibilities. She kept pushing herself to learn and grow, signing up for online courses that enhanced her skill set. Weeks went by, and while the uncertainty weighed heavily on her, she found comfort in the habits she had built. They became her lifeline, a solid foundation that helped her navigate the storm. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, she took each day as it came, focusing on what she could control. Finally, after several weeks of anxiety and uncertainty, Ella received the news she had been hoping for. She was offered a position at a new company, a role that not only paid better but also aligned more closely with her passions. It was a chance to start fresh and embrace a new chapter in her life. When she started her new job, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. But rather than letting fear take over, she leaned on her habits. Her morning routine remained intact, providing her with the energy and clarity she needed to tackle each day. She continued to prioritize her health, making time for exercise and healthy meals, even during busy workdays. In her new role, Ella felt invigorated. The work was challenging, and she loved every minute of it. She found herself collaborating with a team of creative, inspiring individuals who pushed her to think outside the box. The culture of her new workplace was refreshing, and for the first time in her career, she felt like she belonged. Months turned into a year, and Ella's life had transformed in ways she never imagined possible. The small habits she had implemented had snowballed into a complete lifestyle overhaul. She was no longer the passive observer of her life. She was an active participant, shaping her future with intention. One evening, as she sat on her balcony sipping tea and watching the sunset, Ella reflected on her journey. She remembered the days of scrolling mindlessly through social media, feeling unfulfilled and stuck. Now, she felt empowered and in control. The power of habits had changed everything. Her transformation wasn't just about waking up early or exercising. It was about understanding that every small choice she made mattered. It was about recognizing the connection between her daily actions and her overall happiness. Ella had discovered a truth that resonated deeply with her. Habits are not just about achieving goals. They are the framework through which we create a meaningful life. Each small decision, waking up early, choosing to exercise, opting for a healthy meal, had led her to this moment of peace and contentment. As Ella continued to cultivate her new habits, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She began to share her journey with others, writing a blog about personal growth and the transformative power of habits. She wanted to inspire others who felt stuck to take small steps towards change. Her blog gained traction, and soon she was connecting with people from all walks of life, those who, like her, were seeking to break free from their routines. Through sharing her story, she found a community of like-minded individuals who supported each other's journeys. Ella realized that the power of habits extended beyond her own life. It was about building a supportive network, creating a ripple effect of positive change in the lives of others. She was no longer waiting for her life to begin. She was living it, one day at a time, one habit at a time. And as she looked ahead, Ella felt a sense of excitement for the future. Life would undoubtedly present challenges, but she knew she had the tools to face them head on. The power of habits had not just changed her routine, it had transformed her life.